Hello, my name is Frank Donnelly and I'm the Geospatial Data Librarian at Baruch College, City University of New York. In this screencast, I'm going to demonstrate the basic functionality behind ArcGIS StoryMaps, which is a feature-rich application created by Esri for building interactive websites around a specific theme or story. So ArcGIS StoryMaps allows you to combine text, audio visuals, and interactive maps to tell compelling stories, and it's pretty easy to use. So let's see how it works. The first thing that I would suggest, if you've never used ArcGIS StoryMaps before, is to do a search for the ArcGIS StoryMaps gallery using your favorite search engine. That will bring you to this page at this URL here, and you can come down and you can take a look at story maps that other people have already created. This will give you a good idea of what the application can do, and it will give you some ideas for what you can do in your story maps. So just as an example, this is one that I was looking at called Grace and Delight, the Evolution of Public Spaces in 4 American Cities. This was created by the Esri Story Maps team, and it's a good demonstration of a very basic story map. You have this nice cover slide. Then you can have text either block quoted like this and offset, and then you have regular text. And the tool has a number of these widgets. This is kind of a side-by-side map where you can compare two maps to show change over time. And further down here you can see you have more text, and you can flow the text around static images, and there are captions for the images, and they look pretty good. And there's a standalone image. These are relatively easy to create a really nice looking interactive website like this. So let's get started. You can do a search, and you need to get to the ArcGIS StoryMaps homepage, which is storymaps.arcgis.com. You'll need to sign in. If you've never used this application before, you will have to create an account. Esri provides free public accounts, so if you're an educator, a student, or a nonprofit, you can come in here and create an account, and you'll be able to put together a basic story map. I'm going to pause for just a moment while I type in my... Alright, I've entered my password information and now I'm in. So once you log in, you'll see if there are any other stories that you've already created that are listed here. If you scroll down a little bit, there are some other suggestions for learning more. I would highly recommend that you look at this one, Get Started with Story Maps. It is a really excellent introduction. I'm going to cover a number of these points in this video, but this is a nice reference to fall back on. It's pretty thorough, and it covers all the basic functionality and then some. So definitely take a look at that. I'm going to come back up here. We're going to create a brand new story, and you have the option for using these, starting with one of these templates. I'm just going to start from scratch. And here you go. First thing, we start with your title slide. I'm sure that you're going to have a very fascinating and cohesive story to tell. I'm not going to have that in this demonstration. I'm just going to cobble a bunch of things together so you can see how the different tools work. So this is a story map test. Alright, now this is going to be the title image of your website, so it's a good idea to add in a cover image. So I'm just going to grab one here that I've already put in a folder. I'm just going to drag it in. There we go. Open this back up. Go ahead and add it. And there we have an image. Looks pretty good at the top of the page. Above every item that you add, for most of them, there's going to be a little gear wheel with options, and that'll allow you to do things like adjust the way that the image looks on the page. If you take the image from someplace else, then it's not yours. You should attribute it, and you can provide an attribution or a link here. And then also there are some properties. If you want to provide some text here, this is important. If you need to you should make a site that's ADA compliant. So we could say this is image of an NYC street scene. Okay. And then for all the content that we're going to add, whenever you're adding some new content, there's this little plus symbol here. that lets you add a block of content of a specific type. So for example, if I want to add some text, I can click text, and I think I have just some nonsense text here that I've generated. I'll just copy that and come back and paste it in here. And let's see, just if we click in here, just like any other kind of editing tool, you'll be able to modify text to make it bold, to make it italics. If you want to link to some place, basically highlight, and then there's a link option, and then we can paste a URL in there. And then that provides you with a link. We want to add some, we can continue adding more content to this, or we can add another box. So say this is introductory text. We can add maybe some more text here. Let's say this is going to be a title. This is the first section of, and then we can add, for example, put more text. There we go. And you do have the ability to, like I said, you can change the colors of certain text and highlight it in different ways. So we have text, and of course we can also add images. So why don't we put in an image here? I'll add another kind of a standalone image that I have here. And there we have a rather fantastic looking castle. Here you can add a caption that describes what the image is. Alright. For every image or any audio visual that you add, like I said, you do have this, you can select it and you have this gear wheel. So you can provide some alternate text for the image. You also have the ability, with this image selected, we can scale it. So right now we can make it, that is small. This is a pretty big image. So you may want to reduce the size of your images before bringing them in here. One of the things that you can do is that there's an option for float. That kind of made the image a little smaller. So now I can actually put in text that will flow around the castle. There we go. So instead of, we can line the text above or below your image, or by changing the float of the image there, we can have the text float right around it. And we also have the ability, besides adding, I should say about adding images, if you need some sources for images, remember that if this is just a student project, you can do a Google image search and put things in here. But those images are probably copyrighted and belong to somebody else. So if this is not a student project, then you need to be careful about what you're putting in here. A few sources that you can look at. You can look in the Wikimedia Commons. So this is where a lot of the pictures in Wikipedia come from, this source. So these are all public domain or Creative Commons photographs that you are allowed to reuse. Another place that you can go is if you go into Flickr and you do a search within Flickr for some photographs. You'll get all kinds of photographs returned, but then under this license drop downs you can specify, for example, photos that are just Creative Commons or where commercial use is allowed. Even if the image is freely available, there might be some restriction to it. Usually the most common one is you may have to cite the source of the image, maybe provide a link back to it or provide the person's name. Other places that you can go, digital collections of libraries. So the New York Public Library has a pretty extensive digital collection. There are maps and photographs and a lot of other rich material. You can also think of the Library of Congress or the National Archives. If you do take images from here, they are freely available, but they also might have some kind of a citation requirement, so pay attention to that. So just some ideas of where you can get some images. Let's say for video, if I want to put a video in here now, I choose a video option. Now, just like the pictures, I can choose to upload a video, or I can provide a link to a video that's already on a website someplace. So for example, if I have something in YouTube, I can just copy the link for the YouTube video, come back over to my story map, paste in the link, add it, and we'll just wait for a second for that to be added. If you choose to upload your own video or audio, you just have to make sure that it's not too big. If it is, it'll be rejected. If it's too big, then you can think about maybe putting it into a Dropbox or something else and then linking to it from there. Alright, so there I have a video now embedded in here, and just like the images, I can click on the video and then I can choose to have, oh, we already know that's me. You can come up here and then you can modify how text floats around it, or you can make the video a little bit smaller. It comes with a caption, in this case from YouTube, which you can change if you like. So there you have videos. One of the strengths of ArcGIS StoryMaps, though, is that there are lots of different map sorts of widgets that you can add. So let's take a look at that. I'll click on adding new content. I'll choose a map. And now you have a few choices here. By default, My Maps, this is pulling maps that are in your, if you have an ArcGIS Online account. ArcGIS Online is a web mapping platform specifically for creating maps. I have an account there, so I have a number of maps. If you're not familiar with ArcGIS Online, I have another video posted here that you can use for that. But there is a bit more of a learning curve for doing that compared to doing these story maps. Other option, if you don't use ArcGIS Online, up here there's an option for creating something called a new Express map. That will allow you to embed a map in your story map, and then you can customize it to some degree. You can add push pins to the map, you can add labels, you can draw shapes over it. So that's good if you want to highlight a very specific feature. Or if you go to this Living Atlas, you can pull out a bunch of maps that other people have already created, either on ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS StoryMaps. And some of these are very specific, others are more general. You can try searching here to find something specific. If you don't search and you just click on the base maps, then what you'll get is some very generic base maps that you can use for just about any purpose. So here's some stuff from National Geographic, some reference maps, various iterations of the OpenStreetMap are here, a lot of iterations of the OpenStreetMap and a few other things. And then there are some of these fun things too, like this mid-century one is kind of neat. So if I want to embed one of these maps, I can click on it. And then what I need to do is I need to zoom into the area that I'm interested in, because when the user comes to my story map, if you don't want them to see the entire world, but you want to zoom into a specific area, basically you have to zoom in yourself so that when the user gets there, they'll see the zoomed in map. I'm just using the little zoom tools here to get a little bit closer. You could also search by location up here and it will get you to a specific place. But then once you're happy with wherever you are, you can place the map, and then that map gets embedded here. You'll probably want to change the little caption at the bottom to reflect that this is whatever this is, Lower Manhattan in this case. And now the visitor to your page will be able to zoom around this map and look at things in more detail. But you can't do anything, you can't customize this in any other way. Like if you wanted to actually put markers or locations or draw areas on here, then you would use the Express Map option that I showed you instead with that blue button back on that other page. Just to get a sense for where we're going here, we're in this edit mode right now, but if we want to see what this is going to look like to end users, we can come up here to the preview button. And the story maps by default are designed to be kind of a scrolling web page. So if I was looking at this at a phone, I would scroll down with my fingers, or in this case on my laptop. I'm just using the keys. So as you're creating this, it's a good idea to hop out of the edit mode and jump into this preview just to get a sense for what users are going to be seeing. When we jump in here, it's showing us this full screen view, but we can also choose one of these other options that will allow us to see this is what this would look like on a desktop computer, for example. And also other options, this is what it would look like on a tablet or on a phone. One of the nice things about this application is that it will automatically kind of reconfigure things on the fly to fit whatever screen people are using. To go back to my story, I can go edit the story. If you notice next to the preview button there's a design button. That allows us to change some of the basic templates of the site. So I think with this navigation button, if we turn that on, if we add section headings and things, that should add them to the top. If you want to change the theme, basically the overall style, this default is called Summit. But here, let me scroll down a little bit. If I change this to something else, you can see that it has a different look and feel. So you can kind of experiment and decide which one you would like to use. If you want to get fancy, you can really customize it if you have a subscription account. Otherwise, you have to live with those choices, which are pretty good choices. All right. Those are probably the most basic elements. Let's look at something that's a little fancier. Let me add the plus symbol here. At the very bottom of these options, you have these special widgets that allow you to create something that is a little more complex. So there's an option here for creating a slideshow within your story map, which will essentially look like a side-scrolling, sort of like a PowerPoint presentation. There's a swipe application. If you remember from the example that I showed at the beginning, this is how you can set up and create a swipe map. There's another kind of side-scrolling application. I'm going to show you this guided tour. This is kind of neat. Essentially what you do here is that it will create a base map for you, and you can highlight specific locations on the map, and as the user scrolls through, locations on the map will change position, so you can get a sense of movement across geographic space. Let's check it out. I'll click on the guided tour. You can do one that's focused more on the map or that's more focused on your content. I'll do a map focused one. And let's say I'm going to, I don't know, in this story we're going to start out in New York and then end up in Los Angeles, for example. So I'll go over here and I'll give this slide a title called New York City. And then I'll come over here to add that's adding a slide. New York City is my first slide. Underneath here I can add a location. And here I can zoom endlessly, or I can just take a shortcut and do a search. There's New York City. And it highlights it for me, and I can say, yes, I want to add this to my map. Now this is important. Custom zoom level. Tour points are automatically shown at the same zoom level. So what this means is, once I select a bunch of other points, they're all going to be shown at the same scale, and then when we move, the scale isn't going to change, but the position of the map will. Sometimes this is desirable and sometimes it's not. In this case, if you can imagine, I'm also going to add a point for Los Angeles, which is on the other side of the United States. That's going to give us a big map of the United States, and when users scroll, the map isn't really going to move very much. It's just going to shift ever so slightly. On the other hand, if I zoom in too close and keep this close in zoom as my scale, the viewer instead is going to see this map of New York will suddenly disappear and a map of Los Angeles will take its place. So what we need to do here is, in this particular case, is find something that's kind of in between, that shows us where we are in the United States, but then will also give us a sense of movement when we change. So why don't we say this is good for now, add the location. That returns us back to our kind of general view of the guided tour. Let's add a little image. Oops. Meant to do this. I got a picture of New York that I took from someplace. And we'll add that. And then we're going to add a little bit of a story. We began our journey. All right. Once again, notice the little gear wheel is here, that we can add options for cropping the image, attributing it if it's not ours, and also providing some optional text. Okay. To add another destination, we can hit the little plus symbol again for another slide. This will be Los Angeles. And scroll down a little bit. Add a location. Los Angeles, California. Oops. There we go. Looks like LA. We'll add it to the map. We do want to customize the zoom level. So I think for New York City I made this 4. You can choose different zoom levels for different places. It depends on what you're trying to emphasize. Say add location. Brings us back here. Add a little picture here of LA. And that's the image preview. This is the save that. All right. And you can add as many points on here as you'd like. You can also change the order of the slides. How do we get out of here? That was a tricky thing for me to figure out. Come up here to where it says ArcGIS StoryMaps, and that will bring you back out to our main, to our primary draft here. So now if I scroll down here, let's see what this is going to look like. So you can see this is our guided tour. There is New York City. And then once Los Angeles comes up, we can see that the map shifts over. And once again, in this edit view, it can kind of be, you can kind of get a false sense for what's going on. So if we go up here to the preview to see what the users will actually see. So as we're scrolling down the page, we have New York City beginning, and then we slide over here to Los Angeles. So you can imagine if you add a lot more points and scatter them all over the place, you can basically take people on a journey and give them information about each of these places. I'm doing a national example. You can do global and zoom all over the globe, or you can zoom into a specific city at the street level and bebop around to different neighborhoods. But this is pretty cool. It's very easy to put something like this together, whereas if you were doing this yourself using web mapping technology, it would be kind of tough. So this is pretty cool. Let's go back and edit the story some more. And we're almost done here. It's just a little bit slow with the internet today. Uh-oh, we get the emergency cone. That's no good. Let's come back. Fortunately, as we're working, it saves everything we're doing. So we can just hop right back into it. Alright. And of course, if you need to change anything, especially with these kinds of like mapping applications, you can always go back into an edit mode and start messing around with it again to change it. Now, this widget is another element that's in the story map. So we can come down here and continue the story some more and add in some more stuff if we need to. At the very bottom of the story map is a section for credits. This is usually where you would put things, where you would describe, what the website is about. And you can come in here and put an about page and add links to anything that you're citing. How do you actually publish what you're doing? When you're all done, up here there's a little publish button. Right now this is set to private. If I set this to public and then publish the story, then this will become a live story. Next to these links up here, some new links will appear. One of them will be a little link button, which will provide you with a URL that you can share with people, and then this will basically be a public website that other people can visit. There are also other icons that will show up for sharing this on social media. Alright, that is Esri Story Maps in a nutshell. I suggest, once again, check out the gallery, check out their learning page, experiment, and build some cool looking mapping sites. Alright, thanks for watching.